Before we get into the video, I need you guys to do me a favour. Number 1, like the video. Also comment, let me know your thoughts on the case. Now if you're from Manchester, you should know the name Scott Calder, the Manchester gangster, known for robbing other dealers, whether that be cash, jewellery or coke, was a real problem. With a reputation, Scott became known as the Demon, and he used that nickname as a rapper also to rap about his exploits of being the big man around Manchester. However, after robbing a stash house of £40,000 worth of coke from a crime family, Scott didn't think nothing of it. Now how Scott did it was, him and his gang would plant tracking devices on his rivals' cars. He would then track the addresses they would drive to, calculate how many times these guys would go there and how long they stayed, before figuring out which house was a stash house. Once they had the location correct, they would then just run up in a house and take whatever they wanted by force. That meant that Scott had quickly become a hated man and was a marked man, and even his loved ones would serve as collateral damage. Now Scott Calder from Manchester was so confident in his own gangster ability that he often posted messages on Facebook, warning rivals not to cross him, and if they did, he would blast them in the spine. And in this life there can only be one Don. So back in 2014, Scott Calder used the same tactics and managed to rob a stash house belonging to rival and known gangster Mark Baker, who was 45 at the time. All in all, he took a kilo of coke. Now Scott had given his mum Marie a lift to the bingo hall in Harpurhey, Manchester. While sitting in the car park, he was completely unaware that Mark Baker had followed Scott and tracked his Audi A4. Now while Scott and his mum, Marie, were sat in the car outside the Gala bingo establishment, Mark Barker, James Instone and James Henry had armed themselves with a Smith & Wesson and then fired at Scott and his innocent mum. Now Marie held on to her son desperately, and they were in the arm, both of them. Now because Scott was used to this kind of melee, he managed to drive to the hospital and get treatment for himself and his mum. Police interviewed Scott and asked him who did this. However, Scott refused to cooperate. But of course, police knew that Mark Barker was the person responsible. Now just 5 days later, Scott's brother was kidnapped and held for ransom for £110,000. Now Scott himself was eventually arrested after his mate was in one of Scott's car. When it was pulled over, police found 9 trackers in connection with taxing known drug dealers. Now police then seized Scott's laptop and saw files that showed accounts and the money in it, and also the trackers named under known local dealers, and even innocent people associated with the dealers like aunts and nephews and godsons. Now Calder pled guilty and he was jailed for 3 years. Now pertaining to Mark Barker, he tried to offer Scott's mum £50,000 in order for her not to cooperate. She did not take the money. So Mark Barker was jailed for 25 years, James Instone was jailed for 22 years, and James Henry was jailed for 15 years. And this is why, in a lot of circumstances, ultimately crime does not pay. Stay safe.